Welcome to Behind the Book. It's time now for Behind the Book, hosted by Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion, two authors with a passion for books, no filters, and limitless curiosity. Join them now to find out the real story behind your favorite books and authors. And now, Behind the Book.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Book. This is Tess, and I am back. Karen almost forgot what I look like. I was gone so long. But I'm back, and my dad, who had a massive heart attack, is doing much better. He's at home now, finally, after, many days in the ICU. And is recovering slowly, but hopefully he'll be back to spending time with his tomatoes in the garden by the end of the summer. We're hopeful about that. But for those who don't know, my mom is disabled, so I needed to stay with her while my dad was in the hospital. And between my two brothers and me, we were able to kind of piece together a little bit of a life for them while all this was going on. But anyway, we're back. I'm back, and I'm glad to be back. Hello, Karen. How are you?
I am fine. I missed you. I did a couple episodes without you, and it just, I'm telling you, it wasn't the same.
I was thinking she's going to realize how great it is not to have my big mouth on the other end and be like, I've been thinking. Maybe we should break up.
With Karen. We just light out.
It's not you, it's me. Yeah. Anyway, well, you finished your book while I was gone. Tell me about that.
I did. Well, you do quite a number of books in the course of a year. I'm kind of a 2-book-a-year kind of author. I'm working towards increasing my productivity, but for the time being, that's what I do. And so this book it seems like it's been a long time coming because I kept getting emails from Amazon saying, Tess Thompson has a new book out. And I was still working on the same one, but I'm really pleased with it. It's called A Limited Run. I was going to say it's really different from my other books, but I think I say that like every time. This book is really different from my other books. And it's like, I guess they're all different, somewhat different. And it has kind of a unique premise that I hope it's kind of grabs people's attention. And I actually
grabbed mine.
I was going to say I had quite the compliment. I told Tess about this book a while ago, and I had written a little description, and I said, well, this is what it's about. And I don't have it right in front of me, but, I told you, and you gave me the biggest compliment. You said, I wish I had thought of that.
No, the minute I heard the premise, I was like, oh my God, I'm so jealous. Why didn't I think of that?
Well, I'm surprised I thought of it, actually. Okay, do you want to hear the premise? Because I found it.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Here's the premise. When billionaire Felix Worthington invites the 5 cast members of the TV show A Little Slice of Haven to recreate their roles 25 years later, they're initially skeptical. It's an unusual request, even for a self-professed superfan like Felix. For several of them, there were bad associations with playing a member of the Barlow family in the small town of Haven, set in the 1940s. But living in a recreated version of the town, located in a warehouse in Montana, has its appeal, even knowing they'll be filmed with hidden cameras as they improvise with other actors playing the townspeople. And the clincher? $2 million for each of them, provided they stay all 10 days and remain in character the entire time. One by one, they set aside their hesitations and agree to the terms. After all, with $2 million, they'd be set for life. And really, what could go wrong?
I love the last line. Really, what could go wrong? Oh, this is going to be good. I cannot wait to read it.
I hope it's good. That's not probably the description that I'll use on Amazon, but I had to get something together when I sent it off to my cover designer, when they have to know what the book's about before they can create the representation of it. So that was what I, initially told her about. So I'm kind of excited. The first person who read it loved it. So that's good. So we'll see. I'm hoping to get it out before the end of summer.
I'm excited. I got to see the cover too, and it's fantastic. So that's all exciting when it's like time to put the package together.
And we have the same cover designer, Elizabeth Mackey, and we interviewed her not too long ago. So if any of our listeners are interested in hearing more about what goes into creating a great cover, I definitely recommend that episode.
Speaking of great interviews, we have one today that I think people will really enjoy with Sara Rosett. She's a historical mystery cozy writer that I have been following for a long time, and she is one half of I Wish I Knew Then podcast, which I'm a big junkie for. And so she was kind enough to take a break and talk with us. She talked about some things that I haven't heard before, really, right?
Oh, yeah. The minute she said King Sumo, I was like, I've never heard of that. She's been around the block a few times. She
Yeah.
talked about what goes into writing a cozy mystery, which I didn't know about, and the kinds of research for historical novels and how the publishing industry has changed. We touched on that. So I love talking to her.
All right. Well, let's give everybody a listen. Enjoy the show.
Today, we are so excited to have Sara Rosett with us. Sara Rosett is a USA Today bestselling author who writes lighthearted mysteries for readers who enjoy atmospheric settings and puzzling whodunits. She's the author of over 30 novels in the genres of cozy and historical mystery. Sara writes nonfiction for authors, including How to Write a Series and How to Outline a Cozy Mystery. She also co-hosts a podcast for writers, the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. Welcome, Sara.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so excited that you're here. Tell us about your path to publication. When did you first get published and what drew you to mysteries?
Well, I've always loved mysteries. I've always read mysteries, and it was a dream of mine to write a book. And I thought, obviously I'm going to write a mystery because that's what I read, that's what I love. And I've just always been a mystery girl, from Nancy Drew all the way up to, Agatha Christie and modern mysteries and cozies. So I got serious when we had our kids. I got married and we had kids, and I was doing all these jobs where I was writing, but I was not writing fiction. And my husband said, I think one of us needs to go back to school and get a master's degree. And my internal reaction was like, I'm not going to get a degree. If I'm going to use up extra time to do something, I'm going to write a book. And he was like, okay, do it. So, I kind of had to, because I'd thrown down the gauntlet, and he said, go for it. So I started working on that, and it took me, I wrote during nap time because I had two little kids. And so like when one would go to preschool and the other would go down for a nap, I'd write for 30 minutes, and it took me so long to write a draft, but I got a draft done and I edited it and eventually got an agent and queried and, went through that whole process because this was like in the dark ages back before indie publishing. But I got an agent. She eventually sold it. And that was my first book, came out in 2006, and it was a cozy. And so I did cozy mysteries first, traditionally published. And I was probably about 2010, 2011, I started I would go to signings and readers would come up and say, when will your ebooks be out? And I was like, well, I don't know, and so I started hearing about ebooks and it's indie publishing thing. And I knew some people that were doing it and they were making good money. And I was like, maybe I should check this out. So I kind of slowly transitioned into like a hybrid author. And then now I'm pretty much all indie because I just love the control.
Yeah, we always say there's kind of two types of writers. It seems like there's those of us who like the indie and kind of controlling everything and the business side of it, and then some who would rather have a publishing house do it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I'm super curious about this because I also write long series, and so do you. Do you plan them out from the beginning, or do you kind of plan each one as it comes?
Originally, I had no plan. Like when I wrote that first cozy, I knew cozies were usually a series. So of course it was a series. And I had some ideas for like, book 2, she can get involved in this kind of mystery. And book 3, this can happen. But it wasn't like a big long range plan. And so I just kind of winged it through that series of 10 books. And I look back now and think, oh, that's terrifying. But so now I do have a plan when I start out, but I didn't at the time I started. And it was basically just as I went along, I kind of learned things like, oh, this would work better if I had structured it this way. So now when I do a series, I think, I usually think in threes. I'm like, okay, if I can write 3 books and have a little arc for this to happen in these 3 books, then if it does well, then I can have this happen and have another 3 or 4 books, and I kind of plan it that way in my head. But I write more episodic mysteries, like I have a flat art character normally who she drops in, there's the mystery, and there's a little character development, some things going on in her life, but there's not a huge change. So for me, I can envision the series going on longer, than maybe, I don't know, it seems like sci-fi and fantasy readers, they're happy with like 3 books and we're done, or 5 books and we're done. And mystery readers, really, they want that long series if they can get it.
So can a reader read your books out of order?
Most of the time they can. I always say that if you're reading for the characters and what happens in their lives, then you're probably going to want to start in book 1. If you're just reading for the mystery, just to see who did it and kind of the puzzle, you can pick any book up anywhere. Interestingly, most mystery readers want to start with book 1. The people that I talk to, they're like, yeah, I want to start at the beginning because they don't want to be spoiled if so-and-so has a baby in book 5. They don't want to know, or they don't want to know who's going to get together in book 8 if it's a minor character. They just want the whole experience.
I'm really curious about your writing books. Can you tell us what made you decide to write them and how you went about structuring them?
Well, I wrote the How to Outline a Cozy Mystery because it was things that I learned as I wrote cozies, because a lot of the writing advice when I started, it seemed to be focused on like the hero's journey. And that doesn't really apply that well to cozy mysteries because, the hero's journey, you have this, they start out and they go through this big change. And at the end of the novel, they're completely different, either good or bad, positive or negative character arcs. And I was like, that doesn't really apply because my character really doesn't change that much. There's things going on in her life, but she doesn't go through this huge character arc. So I began kind of thinking about all these things about cozy mysteries. I was like, oh, if I had known this before I started, it would have been helpful. And so eventually I just started creating this list of things, and it kind of grew. And again, my husband was like, you should make a course. And I was like, I'm not going to make a course. And he was like, make a course and make a book. And I was like, okay. So eventually I did it, and I put everything together that I wish I had known. So it's all about like in a cozy mystery, one of the big problems is you have to get your character involved in the situation, in the mystery. So like if you write about a police detective, they are assigned the case and they go do their thing and they question people and people have to talk to them. So when you write a cozy, you have to figure out how they're going to get involved and how they're going to get people to talk to them and how they're going to solve the case without knowing like everything that's going on in the criminal investigation side, how they're going to find stuff out. So it's things like that. I was like, if you can figure this stuff out, then it will help you as you write your book. So that's why I did the How to Outline a Cozy Mystery. And I figured writing a book is such a huge topic. I was like, let me just work on how to build a framework and keep it at that, because there's lots of like, if you want to learn about characters and, setting and all these different aspects of writing, there's other books for that, but I kept mine pretty limited and kind of tried to put in what was helpful to me, what I wish I'd known. And then for the series, kind of did the same thing. As I wrote more mysteries, and most of my series are the kind of the flat arc series, I was like, there's not really anything talking about there are things now, but when I looked, I could only find a couple of blog articles about the different types of series. And I was like, let me write this down now that I've kind of figured out that there's these different series and different ones work better for what your goals are. Like if you want to write like a 3-book series, then maybe a robust character arc is the best, where you start out, your character goes through a big change, and at book 3, they're done, But if you want to write a long series of maybe 10, 15 books, it's hard to propel that big character arc again and again and again. So you might want to structure it a little bit differently. So I just tried to put the different things that I learned into the series book too.
Well, you kind of answered the question about outlining. Sounds like you do outline most of your books. In addition to that, kind of what's your process like? What's a writing day look like for you?
Are we talking like theoretical perfect writing day or like reality? It's like a perfect writing day. It's like I get a lot done and I write in the morning and I have the afternoon off and I work out. But reality is, you do a little here, you get up some email, you have to emergency respond to, and then you have to run to the store. So my days are kind of blurry, but I do try and write in the morning, and I use dictation a lot to just get the words down. And I do outline, but I usually, when I begin, I know the first about fourth of the book really well. And then I know like the major things that are going to happen at certain plot points, throughout the book, but I don't have all the details. And so then as I get into the story, then like when I get to the end of that first section, I'm like, okay, now let me think through what's going to happen next. And so it's more like a progressive outline. And now that I have more books out, I spend more time doing just admin and catalog maintenance and stuff like that. I didn't really anticipate that. I didn't think that, the goal is to have a lot of books out. But then once you have a lot of books out, you have a lot to do to keep up with everything. And so I spend less time writing and more time like just keeping all the wheels turning,
At what point do you share a work in progress, and who are your first readers?
Well, I usually wait until I've written it, revised it many times, gone over it quite a few times. And my mom is one of my first readers. She loves the same type of books I do. So I send my stuff to her pretty early. I have a copy editor that I usually send it to and let her work on it before I send it to beta readers. Usually I do that. I send it to the copy editor, get it copy edited, go through, do the proofread, and then I send it to, I have a group of readers that have been with me for a long, long time and send it to them and get their, feedback. So, and now that I'm doing audiobooks, I also turn it into audio, pretty early on. With my first books, I didn't do audio, but now I do audio, kind of trying to release it at the same time. And so then I get the feedback from my audiobook narrator and my audiobook proofer. So I get all that kind of early.
Does the finished book usually match your initial vision of the story, or do things change as you go along?
Most of the time it's pretty close. Sometimes I'll have like a surprise, like, oh, I didn't expect this character to do this, or I didn't think, we'd end up here at this exact point, but it's pretty close. Like I kind of know that the main flow of the story, and it stays pretty close to that. It's not ever exact though.
But you always know who your murderer is?
I think I
before
always
you
have, except
start?
in one case. And I had one book that I was just like, oh my goodness. I outlined in the beginning, I do a mind map, right? Like put the victim in the middle, and then I draw these lines out, and I have all my suspects around it and all the names, and then all of their motives, so like why they could possibly have done it. And I always like, okay, this person is going to be the murderer. And I had one book that it just was not working. It just didn't feel right, and I just couldn't get it. So I went back and I looked at everything, and I was like, oh, I think it's this person. And everything was laid out perfectly for them to do it. So I've had that happen one time. And then another time I was talking to my kids. I was like, so I've got this story going on. I was describing these different characters, and my daughter said, well, who did it? And I said, I don't know, because I like them all. I don't want any of them to be a murderer. So I had to make somebody a murderer that time.
That's funny.
I tend to think a lot of people would hear that you've written more than 30 books and think that you're completely confident and you never have self-doubts. Is
No.
that the case for you?
No, every book. I'm always worried, like every book, is it going to be too short? Is it going to be too long? Is it going to be entertaining? I don't think we ever, lose that anxiety, that we have when we're writing a book. And when I get done and I read over it, I feel better. I'm like, okay, I think this is good. But then there's still that worry when it goes out into the world, because you just don't know how it's going to be received.
So when can you breathe a sigh of relief? Is it when your first readers look it over?
Yeah, pretty much. And and I've done more lately where I try and get professional reviews. Like I send it to Readsy, or I send it to, I'm a member of the Historical Novel Society, and they have reviewers that you can send in your book, and then they publish it in their magazine. And so like if I send things out and those reviews come back good, then I'm like, oh, because they're totally impartial. They're not my readers. They're not my mom. So I feel better.
Yeah. Do you keep a list of story ideas as you think of them?
I sort of have a mental list of things going on, and I have a bookmark folder on my computer that I have, like that I put things in, articles and different things. And I get a lot of my ideas when especially doing the historical mysteries now, I read a lot of biographies and just like historical books. And so I get a lot of ideas from those, and those have little, what are they? Not the sticky notes, but they have a little page marker thing sticking out of them so that I can come back and find, oh yeah, there's that one sentence that I need to help me get this one book going.
Is there a writing book that you'd recommend for aspiring authors?
Yeah. I've got a couple that were helpful to me. Plot and Structure by James Scott Bell was really good. That really helped me get going in the beginning. And then more recently, I read The Heroine's Journey by Gail Carriger. And it's totally different. I mean, it's similar to The Heroine's Journey, but it's just a different approach to it. And I just really like that. And I think it fits very well with the structure of a cozy mystery and historical mysteries. And then the Dear Writer series from Becca Syme, I always enjoy her stuff. She's always got good insights. Good. Yeah.
And always an approach that nobody else really talks about, It's,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's fantastic.
Yes. And it helps us understand ourselves better, I think.
Definitely. And stop beating ourselves up. Like that's a big one, I think, for a lot of us.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite part about the author business? Do you enjoy the marketing and the business part of the work?
I do like it. Like my first love is fiction, is the writing of those stories. But, and so I always feel like I need to be writing, even if I'm not, I feel like I need to be writing. But I do enjoy the marketing aspect of it. I enjoy like trying to figure out ways to help readers find my books and to find the readers that will enjoy what I write. And I like finding new ways to do that. I'm not big into ads and I'm not like one of those people who loves to split test marketing copy. I just don't want to do that. So I'm trying to find other ways to do that, to let people find out about my books.
So that kind of leads into our next question. Do you have any marketing tips for new authors?
Yeah. I would say probably just focus on one thing at a time because, there's so much you can do. And if you're trying to do Facebook ads and book ads and giveaways and all kinds of, it'll wear you out and you'll be exhausted. So I'd say pick one thing and learn how to do that well and kind of get a system set up for that. For me, one of the things that helped me get started was giveaways. I did giveaways on Goodreads and Library Thing. And now Goodreads, you have to pay for them now. But I still think they're worthwhile, even though they're more expensive, because I would rather spend, I think it's like $100 or around $100 for the baseline Goodreads giveaway. I would rather spend $100 towards that and know that I'm going to give books to readers than spend it on ads because I just don't enjoy ads. So I would rather spend my money that way. So I'd say, think about giveaways, and you can also use like King Sumo or something like that to run giveaways, through your site and build up your email list that way. And then, just focus on getting people onto your newsletter list so that you have a way to stay in touch with them.
So talk to us a little bit about book covers. We all know how important they are. What do you keep in mind when selecting a cover?
Usually what I do is I do research because I love research. I love to look at book covers and see what else is out there. So I will create I'll go into Canva and I'll just take a blank sheet of paper and I'll put all the covers that I like. They're, kind of what I think would be a good inspiration for my cover. So I put them all in there and then I send that off to my cover designer. And I just say, I want the book to convey the feeling of a cozy mystery. I want it to be intriguing and puzzling, but like my books aren't dark. So I want I want readers to know when they look at it that it's not going to be like a gritty, serious serial killer book. I want them to look at it and go, oh, that looks fun and interesting and puzzling. So that's kind of what I want to convey. So that's what I try and tell all that to the cover artist and let them kind of do their work and then kind of back off.
I love that idea of sending them a collage of different covers that you like. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, it's been helpful. The thing is I've learned is not to send too many. Like if I can find 3 or 4, or even if I can just find some images, because since my books now are historical, a lot of like the old advertising images kind of capture, what I'm looking for. So I'll send 2 or 3 images and I'll say, these are the clothes she needs to be wearing, something similar to this style, because that's so important to historical readers. If you have the wrong dress, they won't pick it up because they'll think, oh, that's not the era I'm interested in. Because most historical readers are very specific to certain time periods.
Tess and I are both fans of your podcast, but for those who aren't familiar with it, do you mind telling us how you got started and what it's all about?
Sure, yeah. So it's Jamie Albright and I do the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. And we just talk to different authors about what they wish they had known now that they're published, and we talk to some new authors about what they've learned, over just, getting started. And it's been great. We love talking to different authors, and we talk to industry professionals too, and kind of get feedback and news, things that are new, and like how to use, certain services to the best of your, like, to get the most out of them. So it's been really, really good. And we really enjoy just talking, and we enjoy the questions. We have questions like, what do you wish you'd known about marketing and craft? And what do you, wish you could have done differently in certain situations? Do you have anything that you wish you, hadn't done, or you felt like it was a waste of time? Different things like that. And when we talk to the industry professionals, we say one of the most interesting things has been asking them, what do they see authors doing that they feel like they have to do, but isn't producing results? And so it's interesting to hear them say, what they think that authors don't need to worry about, which a lot of times is social media.
Yeah. Karen and I say that all the time to each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. How about on those days when you're just not feeling the muse? What do you do?
Well, a lot of times I think I'm just going to look at this little section right here. And, like if I can get going on just a sentence or a paragraph or something, then it's like I kind of get into it. And then I'm like, oh, and then before long, I'm 2 or 3 pages in, especially if I'm editing. That's easy. If I'm doing dictation and drafting is harder for me. But a lot of times I'll tell myself, it's only 20 minutes. Just do 20 minutes and then you can be done for the day, and then like once I get going, then I'm into this story and it's okay. It's like it's getting over that initial resistance of, oh, this is hard. I don't want to do it. But then once I get going and get into the story, then like, I don't know what time it is, because time just, I'm not aware of time passing, and people are saying, hey, are you going to have lunch?
So do you write your books using dictation?
I do the first draft. I use dictation quite a bit for the first
Interesting.
draft. Yeah.
What tool do you use for that?
I use Dragon. I've used Dragon, and then there's another app that I use. I forgot. I think it's called Easy Voice Recorder. That's what it's called. And it's just an app, and it transcribes in the app for you. But the quality of the transcription isn't as good as Dragon. Dragon's more accurate. But for me, it's easier for me to edit if I have something on the page. And if I do dictation, I can get my thoughts and my words out, and it's terrible. There's like mistakes in it. And I have all these things where I'll start like a sentence and I don't want to say that, and start over. And so I have a lot of editing to do, but for me, it's easier to work with words that are already on the page. And then I'm not sitting at my computer, like working, keeping my shoulders and hands in the same position for hours. Maybe it's only like 1 hour or 2 hours.
But it feels like 18, right?
Yeah.
So are you walking around the house dictating, or do you go for walks, or what do you do?
No, I can't do that. I can't. I know people that do that they think better when they're moving. And for me, I have to be like, it has to be totally quiet. I have to sit down. And a lot of times I have to close my eyes. So I just can't have a lot of stuff going on. But other people, they seem like they do walks and hikes and stuff, which would be great. But I just can't do that.
I have heard of that. And you have to also say the punctuation. Am I correct?
Yes. Well, you don't have
say
to.
the sentence.
You could put it in later, but I decided and it took me a while to get used to the whole dictation thing, but I've decided that I'm going to date myself here. When I first started writing my first drafts, I was writing notes in longhand, and then I would type them up on a computer. And I thought, that's a lot of work. So I learned to sit at the computer and think and type at the same time. And I thought I should be able to think and speak at the same time. I mean, it's basically my brain is coming up with a story. And there were weeks that I thought that I was lying to myself, that wasn't true. But I kept going, and I made myself keep doing it, because I thought basically it's just how I'm getting it out. And I just kept at it.
Has anyone ever said anything discouraging or negative to you about your writing? I know a lot of authors have stories about literary agents or people in writing groups that weren't helpful.
Yeah.
Do you have anything like that in your past?
Oh, yes. I think we all do. We've all got the rejection letters. I got some very nice rejection letters, from agents and editors that were like, this is fine, but not what we need. I never had anybody in the publishing industry be rude to me. I've had some reviews from people that were very snarky. And, I try not to read my reviews now because I find that like a great review, I go, oh, that's great. That's so nice. Thanks. But then if it's a bad review, it's like a gut punch, and I just take it so much harder. And so I try not to spend time trolling through my reviews, because most of the time it doesn't build me up. It makes it harder to keep going. So yeah, I've had some reviews that are just not nice. But then I think, Jane Austen, Stephen King, all these other people, they have the same thing. They have reviews that are, not nice, and it's okay. Everybody has their opinion.
And not every book is for every person. Yeah, but you don't have to read it. Yes, that's right. What do you think is the most gratifying thing about being an author?
Well, I love being able to take these stories and things that I'm thinking of, these characters and settings, and create something that somebody else can read, and they find it entertaining. And I love it when I get emails from people who say, your book helped me through a difficult time, and because I feel like cozy mysteries, historical mysteries, they're just, entertainment, and they're not anything earth-changing, earth-shattering. But to know that I helped somebody through chemo, or maybe when their parent was sick or something, that just is the best.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because my dad, he had a heart attack a couple weeks ago, and it was just like, sitting in the hospital waiting to find out if he was going to be okay, and I was reading some historical romances, and yeah, that's what I write too, but it's just entertainment, and it was such a nice escape. And I was really reminded, this is why we write. Like, yeah, okay, maybe we're not going to win the Nobel Prize, and that maybe that's not the kind of book we even want to write or read, but this could provide some comfort to people when they really need it. And that's just such a gift that we are able to do that, both as readers and as writers.
Yes, it's very true. And it's something that I didn't realize when I first started writing. I was like, oh, I'm just writing these little cozy mysteries, and especially like mysteries and romance and women's fiction doesn't get the respect it deserves, because it does play a very important part in people's lives. And a lot of times that's just discounted.
Now, Sara, you had mentioned that how encouraging and supportive your husband is. Does he read your books?
He does not. He's not a cozy mystery or historical mystery fan, but like my mom reads them, and I have some other family members that read them. So yeah, he's much more into the like sci-fi fantasy. So I'm not his cup of tea when it comes to reading material.
What do you think you'd be doing if you weren't an author?
I would probably be a librarian, because I just love books. I love to be around books, and it would let me feed that obsession I have.
Is there something you wish people knew about being an author? Any misconceptions out there that you come across?
Oh, so many. But one is that traditional publishing doesn't market for you. There's a lot of people that think, oh, I just want to get a trad deal so that they'll do all the marketing. And that is not the case. I worked as hard or harder when I was traditionally published than I do now to market my books. I used to spend probably 6 to 8 months writing a book, because this was back when things came out slower. And I'd spend the rest of the year marketing. Like, I'd have a release month, and I would be like, you had to pour all your attention into that. I went on book tours that I set up and paid for with other authors, just not at all what people think. The version that people think is traditional publishing that's not what happens. And even if you're traditionally published, your books may be in the bookstore, but they may not. They may be on the bookstore shelf for like a month, and then they'll be gone. So, because they have to rotate them out. So lots of things like that. Yeah. And I think that I thought that as I wrote, the more books I wrote, that it would get easier. And I've learned that, or I've come to the conclusion that the writing itself in some ways does get easier, but each book is different. And so every one of them is a new challenge, and I make them that way because I'm like, oh, I haven't written a locked room mystery yet. Let's do that. And then I'm thinking, why did I think this was a good idea?
Well, I was curious. This wasn't on our list of questions for you, but because I also have sort of morphed into historical romance and I started with contemporary. What was that journey for you, kind of deciding, oh, I want to do historical rather than contemporary cozies?
Oh, well, I had a cozy series set in England because I was writing a cozy series about a location scout who went around England looking for locations to film a new Jane Austen adaptation because, I was like, I love Jane Austen, I love England, let me put all these things together. And so I was writing that and I was reading just a bunch of golden age mysteries like Agatha Christie and Patricia Wentworth. And I started thinking it would be really fun to write something set in the 20s. And I was like, oh, that'd be so much fun, but it'd be so much work because I'd have to redo, I have to come up with this whole new setting. I have to learn how to write historical stuff, which I'd never done. And then all of a sudden I thought, wait a minute, I have this world, this contemporary village that's set in England called Nether Woodsmoor. What if I just took that back to the 1920s and used that as my setting and kind of started from there? And so then once I started thinking about that, I was a goner. I was like, okay, I got to do this. But it took me a long time.
That's interesting because it's kind of similar. Everybody kept saying to me, oh, you can't sell historicals, And I thought to myself, how could I get away with it? And what I did was I did a series in the same town, 100 years apart, and the descendants of the, historical. And I didn't know if readers would react well to it, but they seem to enjoy that.
It's a great way to do it because then if you have readers that are in your contemporary series, not all of them, but some of them will move over just because they're curious to see what's going on 100 years earlier or whatever.
Well, now I can ask both of you this because I've only written one book that could be considered a historical, but I was terrified of getting details wrong. Even something as long, the language or how somebody goes about cooking, or I found myself constantly, reading articles and researching. Is that still the case as you go on, or do you feel like you've gotten comfortable with that time period?
Well, I've gotten more comfortable with it. One of my friends, Anna Castle, told me one time she's written historicals, like she was writing them long before I was. And I asked her about it. And she said, once you figure out your era, and if you stay in that era, you get more comfortable. And I think that's true. I do feel more comfortable writing about the 1920s, but I still do so many searches, especially for words. When did certain words come into use? One of my major queries that I'm always typing in is when were blank invented? I just checked the other day to see when earplugs were invented, when Band-Aids were invented, just all kinds of things that you don't think about. That as you're writing along, I'm like, oh, did they have these then? I bet they did, but I always want to know if they did or not, because I know somebody will call me out if they didn't.
Historical readers, they know their stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Especially if they, like you said, they like to read in a certain era. They know the details of that era probably. Although I often wonder, because I'm such a fiction reader that I always think, I wonder if I think I know this because it's true or because it was in a book I liked.
Yes.
Because sometimes it kind of gets morphed in together. But
yes, you can have to separate your fiction from fact and I do that too. I double check a lot of things to make sure it really is true. And it's frustrating. Sometimes there's not a definitive answer about certain things. Right. You just kind of have to go with your best, closest guess to what would be accurate.
Can you share what you're working on now, or is that top secret?
Oh, well, I'm working on a new project that is top secret. And then I'm also working on so I can't talk about that. But I'm working on a short story novella in the 1920s world, working on that right now. And then I'm doing a couple of new fun projects. I'm thinking of doing a Kickstarter for my historical series. I'm going to do the first book came out in paperback. And so I'm thinking of doing a hardcover for that. So I'm researching all that and what all that involves. So I'm excited about that, see how that goes. And just lots of just new stuff that I'm trying. And I'll let y'all know if it works or not.
Well, we'll be tuning into the podcast to find out.
Okay, that'd be great.
And I mean, there's always something new in this business. It's like once you think you know something, it changes. So.
Yes, very true.
All right. Well, we have some fun extra questions at the end,
Sure.
Not necessarily writing related, but we like to have our guests weigh in on a few things.
Okay.
What is one food that will never get past your lips?
Pickles. I do not like pickles.
Really?
Really.
Interesting.
It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if they're dill or sweet?
No, I just don't like them.
Interesting. Okay. Who would you want to play you in a movie?
I've had this question before, and that is always so, so hard. But I think maybe Sandra Bullock. I mean, I think that she's fun and approachable, and I hope that I could see her doing that character, doing me as a character. That's weird to think of, but I guess that would be my answer.
Yeah. Is it a comedy or a tragedy? That's what I'm always
Yes.
asking myself.
Yes, depends on the day of the week, right?
Yeah. What superpower would you pick given the opportunity?
Oh, I would love to be able to go from, I don't know what it would be called, like transport myself from one location to another with just in the blink of an eye. I think that would be fantastic.
What's your biggest guilty pleasure?
Oh, chocolate. That one's easy. Dark chocolate.
What's the worst job you've ever had?
Well, when I was first out of college, I had a job where I worked at a place that did credit reports. They verified information on credit reports. And it was very much a like assembly line type factory setting. I mean, it was in an office, but we had certain things. We had a stack. We'd come in every day, and there'd be a stack on our desk of papers, and we'd have to check, the phone number and the address and the verify that they were employed at this certain place. And I mean, like we had a stack, and we were expected to get those done, and it was on a timer, and we really weren't. It was frowned on to chat, during the day. With your coworkers or whatever. And if you got done, they bring you another stack. It was just like never ending. And it was like, So
like Sisyphus.
I was kind of glad to get out of there.
If you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
Ooh, I would love to be able to speak a foreign language really well. I feel like that's something that I have a smattering of Spanish, but, like to actually communicate in a foreign language and to be able to do it fluently would be amazing.
What's your favorite scent?
I love freshly baked bread.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
What's the most terrifying thing you've ever done?
That would be probably my husband had a job in Naples, Italy for a while, and we got to go live there for a couple months. And I drove a Standard that I hadn't driven a Standard in years. And I drove in Naples, Italy, which if you've ever been there, the way they drive is not like in the United States. Lane lines are just kind of like suggestions, and red lights are like, maybe I'll stop. Maybe I won't. Don't feel like it today. And it was just terrifying, but I did it. But that was terrifying.
I can imagine. What's one thing you're really bad at?
Oh, singing. I can't carry a tune to save my life. I'm terrible.
If you could live your life over again, would you want to?
Yes. Yes, I would. Very fortunate, very happy to be where I am today. Yeah.
That's great. Well, this has been such a treat. We've been really anxious to have you on. So thank you for your time.
Oh, yeah, it's been wonderful. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed talking to both of you.
Thank you for listening to Behind the Book, brought to you by authors Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion. They hope you found it entertaining and informative. If you loved it, tell your friends. And if you have a moment, they'd love for you to post a star rating or review. This has been Behind the Book.